Can the ancient teachings of the Torah unlock deeper meanings in Sonnet 2? Join me as I dive deep into the Torah and the Zohar of Mantua to see if we can crack the code to appreciate the esoteric meaning behind Shakespeare's sonnets. The first verse in Sonnet 2 opens with, "When 40 winters shall besiege thy brow," which scholars should have considered as religious sonnets, because this was from the Torah about Abraham. The poet intended for the sonnets to be understood by only a small number of people with a specialized knowledge or interest in Jewish Kabbalah, because the two primary sources of the sonnets were the Zohar of Mantua and Zohar Adash, both written in Aramaic and Hebrew, which is very interesting indeed. Welcome to this lecture on Does Torah Hold the Secret to Understand Sonnet 2? I'm Peter Matthews. So let's look at the sonnet. When 40 winters shall besiege thy brow, and dig deep trenches in thy beauty's field, thy youth's proud livery so gazed on now will be a tottered weed of small worth held. Then being asked where all thy beauty lies, where all the treasure of thy lusty days, to say within thine own deep sunken eyes, were an all-eating shame and thriftiless praise. How much more praise deserved thy beauty's use? If thou couldst answer this fair child of mine, shall sum my count and make my old excuse, proving his beauty by succession thine. This were to be made new when thou art old, and see thy blood warm when thou feelest it cold. We've looked into the Hebrew gematria because it means something in practically every sonnet. So what has the Hebrew letter bet got to do with Sonnet 2? Well, absolutely everything. It represents the second sephira of Chokmah, representing wisdom. It also depicts the Temple of Jerusalem, the primordial place of creation. The Torah begins with the letter Bet from Bereshit, and the world to come. For Yah, or part of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, the name of God, the Lord Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh is everlasting strength. Isaiah 26:4. Bet, or 2, is about the golem in Shakespeare, the unformed fetus that is transformed into a living, breathing being with wisdom, perplexity, sin, and shame, bringing about the need of a covenant. You see, scholars have previously thought Sonnet 2 begins with a military siege similar to Virgil, Ovid, and Drayton, suggesting a young man's beauty does not belong to him, that when he is old, he will look back with shame, though this could be avoided if he had a child to inherit his beauty. In part, these scholars are correct, though all of them miss the real key laid out by Emilia Bassano. 40 winters refers to the Abrahamic Covenant of the Jews and the Gentiles who are grafted into the vine through the Jewish Messiah, who is a son of David, being son of Abraham. The 12th century Torah scholar Maimonides tells a story of how Abraham was 40 years old when he became aware of his Creator. And he wrote, Abraham was 40 years old when he became aware of his Creator. When he recognized and knew him, he began to formulate replies to the inhabitants of Chassidim, where he lived, and debated with them, telling them that they were not following a proper path. He broke their idols and began to teach the people that it is fitting to serve only the God of the world. Then he overcame them through the strength of his argument. The king Nimrod desired to kill him. He was saved by a miracle and left for Haran. There he began to call in a loud voice to all the people and inform them that there is one God in the entire world, and it is proper to serve him. You see, this is interesting, as 40 years is a traditional age of Jewish Kabbalists to begin teaching wisdom, or to teach the Zohar, as recorded in Pirkei Avot 5:21. The variation to this rule was with Rabbi Isaiah Bassano of Venice and Padua, who taught Moses Hayim Lazzato from a young age. Rabbi Isaiah Bassano described in a letter how Lazzato began his teaching. It was because of his desire at a young age, perusing his extensive library. And I quote, "And he used to come to my house every morning early, light and swift as a deer, to learn the words of the living God. He searched all through my library, found there some writings that God granted me, and also tasted the tree of life. Then he began to explore in the valleys of secrets, and he began to love it with a sweetness of spirit." So why am I telling you this? Because I'm building upon a foundation to reveal the true meaning behind the sonnet. These insights will enrich the interpretation of Sonnet 2. So bear with me for a moment and I'll show you the keys. We learned that the second part of Zohar 1.1a, Rabbi Shimon teaches of God's covenant through Abraham, concealing it within the seed of the rose, which we covered in Sonnet 1. This seed endures, unlike other seeds, for the tree of life is above all trees bearing fruit. That's from Genesis 1:12. See, the Torah is the middle line of the tree of life, with mercy to the right side and judgment to the left side. Zohar Hadash's commentary on Midrash Hanilim 4d tells us the covenant God made with Abraham concerned 5 things. And these 5 things are important as we move through the first 54 sonnets. The covenant of circumcision, Genesis 17:9-13. The covenant of the rainbow, Genesis 9:12-17. The covenant of salt, Numbers 18:19. The covenant of retribution for their sin, Deuteronomy 28:58-68, and the covenant of the priesthood, Numbers 25:13. You see, the earth was made from fire, air, water, and work, and the earth, dust, basically. We've heard this from many religious and philosophical works from which God created minerals, vegetables, animals, and humans. God made a covenant with Noah and all generations to come that he would never flood the earth again. This was a covenant of water. One aspect of Abraham's covenant is that we pay for our disobedience, which was, as I discussed, the covenant of retribution for our sin. It's also what we call a covenant of fire, because water could no longer be used. King David's sin in 1 Chronicles 21 is a perfect example, where 70,000 men paid the price of his sin, and God stopped the angel with his fiery sword before he took the city of Jerusalem, but only after King David repented. Fire is the judgment of civic leaders' sins. Water is now a blessing, and fire is a plague. As it is written, though they may have escaped the fire, yet another fire will consume them. Ezekiel 15:7. Psalm 97:11, and throughout the Midrash it states, light shines on the godly and joy on those hearts are right. To that end, Midrash Anelim 5a reminds us that by wisdom a house is built, and through understanding it is established. Proverbs 24:3. Continuing our discussion from Sonnet 1, where a man must do three things. Now these three things we should remember as we continue through the sonnets. 1. Build a home to live in. Plant a vineyard, find an income for himself, and once he is secure, find a wife, have children, settle down so that he is able to serve God and engage in Torah and not be distracted by other women. Conversely, the fool finds a wife, then gets a job, and then tries to build a home for his family, for he thinks he is free, but in reality he is in bondage to his wife and is obsessed with the livelihood with no time for God or Torah. So, the key here is Bereshit, or in the beginning. Bayit Rosh, build a house first. As Emilia tells us in Salve Deus Rex Judaeorum, or Hail God King of the Jews, but that foregoing scriptures must take place. In this case, Emilia is discussing how the sting of Egypt rose up against Christ in the Garden of Gethsemane, but the prophecies must be fulfilled. The application is that Jesus had built his house first, over the house of Jacob, heaven's great giver, Emilia. He had worked as a carpenter, learned Torah to become a rabbi, as did his brother James, and did not rise up through ego and anger and feed the darkness. Although if God, by prayers, had an army sent of powerful angels, who could prevent them? So Emilia tells us. Jesus could have destroyed the army, but broken Torah, and this is the problem. So he chose peace. Like Christ, we must build the house first. He prepared the earth with plants, animals, birds, fish, and all manner of sustenance before creating Adam. And after his wife, Eve, he created us in his image and handed everything over to us for our dominion. Now, we must ask the question, as Emilia has, considering by wisdom a house is built and through understanding it is established. Should we follow the plan of Torah? Should we, as the sonnets say, dig deep trenches in thy beauty's field, or Israel's field from verse 2 of the sonnet, and build a home to live in, and find a proud livery so gazed on now? In other words, to plant a vineyard or find an income to support himself. And once he is secure, find a wife, have children, and settle down. But if he chooses not to follow Torah, the poet reveals he will be a tottered weed of small worth held, then be asked where all the beauty lies. And all he will be able to reply is, look within thine own deep sunken eyes, eating the bread of shame and thriftiless praise. Now you see where it comes from. It's about the Abrahamic Covenant and the life of Abraham. See, as a young man growing up, Abraham was a son of Terah, according to Genesis 11:26-28, and they lived in Ur-Kasdim, and then moved to Haran, also known as Aram, which is where his father passed away. According to Joshua 24:2 and 15, Terah was an idolater, and so was his family, including Abraham, up until the age of 40 winters, before his brow was besieged by the Almighty God. There are two secret codes here: Abraham's brow and the bread of shame that we'll now investigate. The principal deity of Ur-Kasdim was from the Sumerian Nana, meaning light giver, essentially a moon god, and in Haran it was the same astrological moon god named Sin. Other gods worshipped in Haran were Sin's consort Ningal, who bore him a son, the goddess Atagas, and the goddess Alat, who is the pre-Islamic god known as Allah. Yeah, but you didn't know that one. It's actually recorded by an 8th century Muslim scholar who recorded the history of the Jews and what is actually stored and the ancient gods. Look it up. I've written a paper on it. Anyway, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh was certainly a jealous god. See, Abraham had dug deep trenches, and I mean real trenches in clay, in thy beauty's field, referring to the majesty of creation and imagery of the beauty of the future of Israel. And he made brick in thy youth's proud livery. See, it has a wonderful double meaning. That is in servitude to sin, building the sanctuary of Hilul, in servitude to his father. Though like the Tower of Babel, they will be a totted weed of small worth held. Then being asked where all thy beauty lies. The Zohar 112a tells us Sarah was the daughter of Haran, Abraham's brother, not Terah. Therefore, she was his niece. Many scholars have got this wrong. So I just wanted to clear that up. We can then understand the verse to say within your own deep sunken eyes were all eating the bread of shame is due to the sin of Adam, not Abraham, and all human souls fell with the sin of Adam. The bread of shame has been a doctrine of the Jews and particularly the Pharisees for many centuries. Billy Phillips said that we receive nothing in this physical dimension known as planet Earth without earning it. You see, many Jewish Kabbalists agree that nothing is free, although believing it is our ego that has caused us to be subject to the adversary or Satan. And it is all just thriftless praise. Satan will eventually send us a bill, which could result in the loss of happiness, business, marriage, or our health. So Sonnet 2 begins with God pondering the Abrahamic Covenant, with an overlay of Zohar Adash on building the house. Then launches into God's planning of creation prior to man, basically day 1 and day 2, and his concealment of light because of his own foreseeing Abraham's family and friends in sin. Here we have Christ's answer to the salvation of mankind. It was besieging Abraham's brow in the rose and the cup of Christ's blood to make him a great nation and a great people, sealed by a 42-letter name of God, which we will cover in a later episode. It's going to be quite wonderful, that episode, I can tell you now. Emilia Bassano in Salve Deus Rex Judaeorum, or Hail God, King of the Jews, tells the Pharisees could not see he was the Lord of light and truth. We were highly blessed even in his pain, for justice sate looking with an angry brow on blessed misery appearing now. The poet was resonating the prayer of the pre-incarnate Son of God, or Elohim according to the text, to the Father, Yud-He Vav-He, over creation, as one, and over Abraham himself for godly intervention. Answer this fair child of mine, a son of creation. His amount will count for something and not be the excuse of his forefathers. Let's prove this beauty by succession of his name. Let's make his name great, speaking of the future of Israel. In these 3 verses, if thou couldst answer this fair child of mine, shall sum my count and make my old excuse, proving his beauty by succession thine. Emilia uses the same word, successors, in her dedication to Lady Anne, Countess of Dorset, in Salve Deus. The word Anne actually means radiance. Therefore, Emilia dedicated this work of grace to Yud-He Vav-He, or the spirit of Yud-He Vav-He, Shekinah, the divine radiance who lights the holy lamp, which we'll discuss shortly. Emilia used the word successors in Salve to distinguish the difference between her own lineage of Abraham, King David, and the same lineage as Jesus Christ, as opposed to those gentry she called not of true stock of honour, who come to rise and fall. Another secret code is the use of the name of God, the tetragrammaton used by Kabbalists to unlock gates, thereby releasing the power of God. You see, each name of God opens a different gate, thereby giving a different blessing. One 16th century Jewish rhythmic chant poem citing the 42-letter name of God prays for those needing strength and protection by calling upon God using the following 7 names, which I won't read them in Hebrew for a reason. I'll read them in English. Awesome One, Mighty One, Invulnerable One, Holy One, Unique One, Exalted One, and Knower of Secrets. Michaela Matt confirmed rabbinic literature states the 42-letter name of God, which abbreviated is Shem Mem Bet. It's a prayer that usually concludes by following a 6-word combination recited once a year on Yom Kippur, which, look, I'll show it on the screen so you can actually see it. Now, this is taken from the Babylonian Talmud, Yoma 66a, in instruction on Yom Kippur, where the priests and the people standing in the temple courtyard, where they would hear the explicit name or the 42-letter name of God, and they prostrate themselves on their faces and say, and I'll read that in English rather than Hebrew, "Blessed is the name of his majesty forever and ever." Interestingly, this 42-letter name of God is also the force behind the mitzvah, a divine connection for a Jewish man to build his house, study Torah, commit to work and good deeds, marry and procreate. Consequently, the imagery is a double-edged sword drawing on the blessing of God, appropriating the divine judgment and severity that appears in the story of creation since the fall accompanying the primordial sin, which Kabbalists believe is their task to counteract by drawing divine mercy and love to repair the world, or tikkun olam. The final two lines of Sonnet 2 continue the prayer of the poet, where Yud-He Vav-He is speaking over creation and over Abraham himself for godly intervention, where he is to be made new by the promises as follows: "My covenant I will establish with Isaac, whom Sarah shall bear to you at this time next year." Genesis 17:21. "I will certainly return you according to the time of your life, and behold, Sarah your wife shall have a son." Genesis 18:10. Now, even though Abraham was 99 years old, he dared to believe God that he would be made when thou art old, from Emilia again, with warm blood running through his veins. This draws on Emilia's imagery of the blood of Christ through Abraham, that love and duty bind, versus the gentry of her day who were not worthy of the throne and blot thy royal name. Very interesting. Abraham was able to bear children at the age of 99, according to the Torah. Isaac was born when Abraham was 100 years of age, as recorded in Genesis 21:5, thus fulfilling the prophecy and imagery in Sonnet 2. And it reads, "This were to be made new when thou art old, and see thy blood warm when thou feelest it cold." What a wonderful sonnet. Thus the poet concluded Sonnet 2 with God satisfied with his plan of the Abrahamic Covenant of the Jews, where he besieged Abraham's brow at the age of 40 winters when he became aware of the Creator and embraced Torah. Torah is called Rishit, meaning beginning, for in the beginning was Torah. Elohim, pre-incarnate Christ, created the heavens and the earth from Genesis 1:1, or in this case, entered into the covenant with Abraham and delivered Torah. Rabbi Judah Hanasi said, "The world was created in 6 days and Torah 40 nights. There is your key." This refers to the giving of Torah and the renewal of the covenant upon Mount Sinai with Moses in Exodus 24:38, which states Moses was there with Yud-He Vav-He 40 days and what? 40 nights. We understand from Moses' encounter on Mount Sinai that Yud-He Vav-He is pure light, a radiance so brilliant that when Moses came down the mountain from spending time with God, Aaron and the people of Israel saw the radiance on Moses' face, and they were afraid to come near him. Exodus 34:30. Ezekiel described the glory of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh as a glowing halo, like a rainbow shining in the clouds on a rainy day. Ezekiel 1:28. What an imagery. Jesus said to the people, I am the light of the world. If you follow me, you won't have to walk in darkness, because you will have the light that leads to life. John 8:12. Zohar Dash 5d tells us whenever Rabbi Yohanan would engage in Torah, his face would shine like Moses. But Judges 5:31 tells us the final verse of the Song of Deborah was, So may all your enemies perish, Lord. But may all who love you be like the sun when it rises in its strength. Beautiful. What happened after it was sung now? Then the land had peace 40 years. Judges 5:31. Song of Songs and the covenant go hand in hand, just as the number 40 goes hand in hand. In Hebrew gematria, the number 40 is the letter Mem, which literally means brightness of the sun. A tzaddik, a righteous one, or in the feminine sense, tzaddikus, a righteous woman, depicting the living water from the well of Lebanon. The brightness is likened to the Bassano's imagery of the purple seed of the silkworm, for the worm encases itself within its own silk. After all, the very meaning of the Zohar is defined by Daniel Matt as follows. Zohar, radiance, sowing seed for its glory, like the seed of the fine purple silk, wrapping itself within, weaving itself a palace. A palace, notice that? A house, a palace, constituting its praise, availing all. This is the very same imagery of the husk of Tikkun Olam that is weaved right throughout the Shakespearean works. Emile Bassano left us many keys in Sonnet 2. Always remember, if we separate ourselves from Torah, we lose a connection to life. Thanks for watching, and bless your hand.